Hey, welcome back to A Level Deeper, folks. Today we are going on a journey of transcending. Transcending what, you ask? Transcending transaction. How often does it feel like life is just kind of like this series of transactions? I know the feeling, and maybe you do too, when it just seems like we're on autopilot and going through the motions. My guest today, Kemper Sosa, has taken on the mission of transcending those transactions to create interactions and moments that, well, go a level deeper. And although Kemper is sort of a self-described idealist, he's not necessarily some philosopher or mental health professional. He part owns and operates a gym and has been in the health and fitness industry for over a decade. But this idea of going deeper than transactions starts with choosing to do something differently in our lives. And what often comes with that is that it's hard because it can be painful to start to make change.
I think the pain that you know is a lot more comforting than the pain that you don't. I think the pain of trying to figure out why do I feel a little off or dysfunctional or irritated, whatever it is, it requires work. It's a lot of work. And that work can outweigh the pain of just remaining as is.
In the conversation you're about to hear, Kemper and I talk about how we can create moments and interactions in our lives that are filled with more love and what that looks like. We talk about bringing emotion into the workplace and even words like love in a professional setting and how they can exist there. We talk about change and what leads to making meaningful changes in our lives, and we talk about a great framework for having difficult conversations no matter what the outcome ultimately is. Overall, I had a great time with Kemper and even got to answer a question that he had for me, which was something different for the show. So I hope you stick around till the end as we talk about why I started this podcast in the first place and why people like me and Kemper have decided to share some of our ideas and put something out into the world by overcoming some of those mental blocks and stories that we tell ourselves that often get in the way. If this is your first time listening, welcome. Sit back, relax, enjoy the show. If it's not and you're enjoying the show, I'd still love if you would just hit that pause button, take 5 seconds, leave a rating on whatever platform you're listening on, and then push play again. That'd be awesome. I'd really appreciate it. Anyway, here is my conversation with Kemper Sosa. This morning, I hop on Facebook and I see that you had posted some writing that you have been doing. and so I spent a part of my morning taking a look at some of the things that you were writing. And I want to start with, you're starting to do some of this writing. I want to dive into that more. But first of all, the name that you chose for your newsletter, to me, felt very intentional and very strong wording. Tell us about the name and where it came from.
I actually created that whole post for this podcast, just so you know.
That's what it felt like.
Did it? I forgot. That's right. Yeah. So I started a blog. I actually started writing this blog probably 7 or 8 months ago and haven't done anything with it because I didn't have enough content written up. So that is, I feel like it does kind of cross over into your show, which is totally about meaning and connectivity. But yeah, the name of the blog, Transcending Transaction, it was intentional for sure. I think something that really speaks to me and gets me highly energized is and you could relate to this too, dude. It's just like it's another way to say like a level deeper. You know, it really is about, hey, we have all of these relationships in our life, whether we want them or not. And it could be like with your family, or it could be when you're at Starbucks and, you know, the woman at the cashier is checking you out for your coffee. Like these little relationships that we have, for the most part, I do feel are heavily centered around transaction. I engage with you because I have to get a thing. And there's really no other thought beyond that. And for me, I feel like, man, that we're leaving so much on the table emotionally and fulfillment wise if we don't try to multiply these meaningful relationships. So the transcending part is, hey, man, we have 1,000 transactions with humans every single day. And if how can we transcend those to be more meaningful? And if we transcend just like 3% of them every day, I feel like we could get a lot more joy and love into our lives. So part of that title is me kind of unpacking personal experiences and business experience, relationship experience, to point out these relationships that I come across every day and how I try to capitalize on them.
Okay, so how do we transcend transaction?
Mm.
If we have these hundreds, if not thousands, of transactional moments where we're interacting with another human every day, maybe kind of paint the contrast or paint us a picture of what does a transactional interaction look like, and what does an interaction that transcends transaction look like? What's the difference?
Here's a great example, dude. I was at Plum Market yesterday because it was my birthday, and we wanted to do steaks at night. All right, and I go up to pay for the steaks, and immediately, and I do this every day. You know, the person that's across the cash register, they say, hey, how are you? And I say, good, how are you? And then they said, hanging in there. And a transactional relationship would be like, that's it, we're done. Great. It was just like we exchanged some words, give me the steaks, and I'm gonna go home and cook the steaks. But I caught that he said, hanging in there. And I'm like, and I asked him, I'm like, what, hanging in there? What do you mean by that? And then and then he went into to talk about like nothing crazy, but he talked about like he was there all day and he's just a little tired and whatnot. But that moment, that pivotal moment of me just saying, hey, dude, can you tell me more about that? I think just comes from the awareness of knowing, hey, there's another human being across the aisle from me or the counter from me that has, has a story. So I think if I were to give you one word, Jed, I think it's love, which is very abstract, but I do think bringing love into as many interactions as you can could help transcend a lot of these little menial interactions.
How did, in that story that you just told, how did the person respond when you stepped outside of the transaction, right? I'm assuming he probably had 100 interactions that were, how are you? Good. How are you hanging in there? All right. What's the total? Okay. See you. Have a good day. And you broke that pattern. How did he respond?
He wasn't ready. He wasn't ready for it. He was caught off. He was caught off guard. Whether it was because he wasn't expecting it or he didn't want to go down that road with me, which is totally fine. But he was thrown off. He was like, I wasn't, he's in his mind, you could see I was not programmed to respond to that question. I was only programmed to respond to, hey, how are you? So he was thrown off.
Yeah. Isn't that sort of I don't know. I guess isn't that sort of a shame that when, not that response or is wrong at all, but it feels like it's sort of a shame that we're almost taken aback when someone actually steps outside of the transaction. We're so used to engaging in such a transactional nature that when someone does something else, we're kind of like, oh, I wasn't expecting that. Isn't that a shame that that's our default setting?
Yeah, dude, it is. And I get caught in that all the time too.
For sure.
I'm thinking about something else and I just need to move on to the next thing. But yes, it is a shame. It is. I feel like, wow, we could be way more pleasant humans if we acknowledge it. Have you ever heard of called region beta theory?
No.
So one of my cousins threw this across my radar. We were talking about people living in pain. It's this low grade pain that people live in that they don't even realize they're living in. Such pain could be emotional, physical, spiritual, whatever it is. But it's so low grade that it's not enough pain to cause them to change, but it's enough pain that they remain consistent in their behaviors. And I think when I think about human relationship, I think most people live in that region beta world where they're not thriving, but they're also not in enough pain to like step outside of their current circumstances and, shine the flashlight on areas that they maybe need to change a little bit.
I started this podcast for a very specific reason. I crave meaningful conversations and wanted to create an outlet to have more of them in my life. By recording discussions I was already having with friends and new conversations with new people, I guess I just wanted to bring deeper, more thoughtful conversations to a larger audience because I think we all have an opportunity to grow from them. I got to tell you, it makes me uncomfortable to do so, but I'm asking for your help. I'm imagining a show funded by the people who want to support deeper conversations. So for the cost of 2 coffees per month, you can help keep this show going, and as a thank you, get access to some exclusive behind-the-scenes content that isn't available anywhere else. In the episode description is a link to our Patreon where you can pledge your support and automatically get access to all the bonuses. So after the show, I'd love if you'd head there and check it out, and thank you in advance for your support. Okay, back to the episode. Why? Why do you think we exist or we accept this sort of low-level state of pain?
I think the pain that you know is a lot more comforting than the pain that you don't know. I think the pain of trying to figure out why do I feel a little off or dysfunctional or irritated, whatever it is, That requires work. It's a lot of work. And that work can outweigh the pain of just remaining as is.
Yeah, I mean, where did you learn that from? You know, is there a story or a moment in your life where you came to a realization, or you know, that maybe you were accepting some sort of base level of pain, and then you made an intentional action to step outside of that? And even this idea of stepping outside of this transactional nature, you know, where did this come from your life experience?
Jeez, that's a big question, dude.
That's what we're here for, right?
That's what we're here for. Yeah. I don't know if I could point to one specific thing. You know me. I'm in the health wellness industry, right? Like I run a health fitness studio here in Ann Arbor, Michigan, where behavior change around starting, exercising is a very painful process for one that has not done that. Not only is it like a habit change where you got to schedule your workouts, you got to drive to the place you're going, you have to change your work schedule around. But then when you get to that thing, like there's like physical pain. Like it hurts. It hurts to sweat and lift weights and get your heart rate up. Like that is very uncomfortable. So I think growing up in that industry, it's a great platform to pull one in a direction of like, hey, yes, this pain that I'm enduring with health and fitness, it is unpleasant. But on the other side of that is a lot of thriving and health. And then once you've experienced that, it makes all of these other painful things in life, I think you become more receptive to shining the flashlight in the other areas because you did the work with your health and fitness. You saw a positive outcome. So it's just psychologically, it's like, hey, this actually does have benefit. So I think the health wellness industry definitely is a great platform to, at least for me personally, to kind of review what it looks like and what the attributes are and positive attributes are of going into discomfort, experiencing it, changing. I hope that kind of answer where you wanted to go with that.
Where or what drew you to the health and fitness industry in the first place?
I guess super young, dude. Like my mom was group X instructor. She did aerobics, and my brother and I, we were 4 or 5 years old. We would go and sit with her in aerobics classes. They're like when we weren't in school. It was like our daycare. I guess it was instilled at a very, very early age. And then building off that platform, starting to get into high school and playing sports, I was more drawn to the performance side of the sport than actually playing the sport. Like, how do you run faster? How do you become stronger? And I was a horrible athlete, dude. And maybe that was why I gravitated to like, hey, I can't do this thing, but maybe I can figure out how people can get better at it. So then right at the end of high school, going into college, I knew exactly that I wanted to study exercise science and fitness. So it was all consuming. That was all I would read. That was all I would watch. So it only made sense to pour into it when I went to college. And then from there, it was all history. Got my degree in exercise science, got in the personal training game. From there, here I am now, in Ann Arbor.
I always think it's interesting how I just had a friend, Alan Largen, on the podcast recently, and he also talked about his sports career growing up. And he wasn't a very high performer in sports, and that actually led him towards, well, maybe the way that I can I can differentiate myself is through the shoes that I'm wearing, and that led him to becoming a footwear designer and unlocked many incredible opportunities for him in his life. It's interesting hearing you say the same thing about, well, maybe because I wasn't a high performer in sports, that led me to focus on a different side of sports. And now here we are, I don't know how many years later, over a decade later, and you're still following that same path. Isn't it just kind of interesting how, I'm sure at the time, if we could have asked Kemper, like, hey, would you rather be better at sports or not? You'd probably rather perform better at the actual sport itself. At least I'm making that assumption. But yet that didn't lead you down, or maybe wouldn't have taken you down the path that you've ultimately gone down. Isn't it just kind of interesting how that seems to be the case in our lives?
It does, dude. And I think it happens all the time. Like even now, like I love fitness, health, wellness, will always cherish it. But I actually prefer more of the relationship building that goes along that process now more than anything. So if you were to ask me, hey, Kev, would you rather like be in health, wellness space or relationship build but be in like the food industry? I might pick the food industry if it keeps that relationship building piece. But I feel like health and fitness and wellness, it sets such a stage for people showing up at a very vulnerable place because they want to make such an impactful change. And so they're coming in vulnerable. And then you got someone like me who's on the other side that feeds off of like that level deeper stuff, right? Like you're doing. And it's just like these magical energies connecting with each other and everybody wins.
At what point during this journey did you start to shift from, or maybe it was present from the beginning, but was there a point where you started to shift from, you know what, maybe I don't draw as much meaning from just helping someone meet their basic health and fitness goals or hitting different numbers or transacting in that way. I actually want to help them on a deeper level. I want to build a relationship with them. That's the element that I really like. Was that present from the beginning, or did you learn that throughout the course of your professional career?
I think it was always present, but I wasn't aware of it early on. You know, when I was late, I started training when I was 18 years old. I'm working with women that are, in their 50s. So for me, I wanted to help them lose weight and I wanted to help them build muscle. But there was something I really drew some energy from when, we started talking about deeper things and why they actually started to make a health change, which almost always is never from an aesthetic standpoint. It's always from a deeper place that's more emotionally tied. But I would say probably like early 20s, early to mid 20s, I really started to become aware of like, dude, man, I really enjoyed that conversation I had with Mrs. Jones. Not about the weight stuff or the training stuff. It was about, well, she just opened up to me about her daughter and why she's doing this. And that was when I think, I started to really gravitate towards those conversations, not just with the people I was training, but even like the people in my team members, my friends, my family. I just remember I had low tolerance for surfacey conversation. So since then, and people might get annoyed with this, I know they do, but I do try to just take it one level, you know, more deeper, more meaningful.
You said people might get annoyed with it, and I know they do. Tell me more about that.
Not everybody wants to have those deep conversations and get vulnerable. And myself, like there's times where I need to get in the right mindset. But yeah, there's a ton of people. Like even I'll actually use my wife for example. She'll like this one. I think she was like 7 or 8 months pregnant, and we joke around because I'm very much in the clouds, and she's more of like a realist on the ground. And I went up to her, I'm like, hey babe, like what are your dreams? Like after we have this baby, what are your dreams? And she rolls her eyes. She goes, Count, just to get through this life. So now this is like, and it was just like a cute, funny way of like saying, Count, like I don't really want to talk about vision stuff in the future. Like, can we just put the show on and eat the popcorn and watch TV? But yeah, I think we do got to be mindful of who we're engaging with. The dude at Plum Market probably wasn't ready to have a life conversation of why he's just hanging in there. But I think part of the reason why people don't like going there is because it's a vulnerable place, and we don't like to be vulnerable. We like to stay covered up.
That is at least a great point. That it's like I tend to be, as you say, in the clouds. I would say I exist up there most of my life as well. I'm very idealistic, and I think it's a good reminder that even a conversation that we're going to have where we are going to go deeper, the setting and the timing and all of those things, it does matter, and to expect that 100% of our interactions are going to transcend transaction and are going to be deeper. I go back to that conversation you had with the cashier. It's just kind of like, okay, there could be a surprise as far as I wasn't expecting you to have this conversation with me. And at the same time, they've probably got all of these metrics and things that their job depends on as far as, moving people through the process. And so he's not really in a place where he can have a 15-minute conversation with you about what he's going through in life. So I guess that in the story with your wife is just kind of, an interesting thing that I do think as people who seek this meaning and seek to transcend transaction, sometimes we probably have to be mindful of it might not be the right time or the right environment, or people might not be ready to meet us in that same way, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I will say, I do think more people want to go to that space, whether they realize it or not. I think a lot of the pain that people feel, they don't realize that the antidote could be just being a little bit more vulnerable. So what the timing is one thing, but at some point in time, I do think people need to, open up the shell and have that conversation. Here's another great example, dude. I won't name names, but this is a perfect example in business how this showed up. So this was a handful of years ago. We had our leadership team, and at the time we had like 6 or 7 people on our leadership team. But we do these quarterly offsites, And these quarterly offsites are about looking at, how the business did financially. Do we need to hire anybody? What were our costs? What do we need to innovate moving forward? It was very tactical strategy business stuff. There was a member on our team that we could all tell was a little not themselves. They were high anxiety. For the most part of that meeting, we were kind of pushing through the agenda and talking about tactical stuff and business stuff. And there was one person that called out the energy in the room to this person. Hey, dude, I don't think we can move on with any of the stuff on the agenda until we talk about what's going on with you. And the whole energy stopped. It paused. The speed of how we were cruising through the agenda stopped. And this person broke down completely, like completely sobbing, completely vulnerable. And this is someone we'd never expect to like emotionally open themselves up, to a group of people. And this person unveiled what they were going through. And it was a very anxious time in their life. And they were seeking help to manage anxiety. And we had no idea. But at the end of that, and this probably derailed the agenda by a good, 90 minutes, we didn't complete everything that we wanted to do on that docket. But we completed the most important thing that we didn't even know we had to complete, which was understanding this key member of our team and being there to support them. And they may have not been ready to talk about that stuff on their own, but it happened. And we all look back at that day and say that's probably one of the greatest moments in our business, that we had that shared experience that was a humanity, love, transcending transaction type moment, because somebody said, dude, you're not right. And if you're not right, we're not right. And until we all get right, we can't do this business thing.
What a moment.
Powerful.
I mean, just to see someone especially in a business setting, it's one of the things that I feel like I come up against a lot in my life. And I'm curious because I look at what you all do at AFS, Applied Fitness Solutions, the gym that I'm assuming at right now.
Mm-hmm.
I perceive, and it seems like you bring emotion into the business world, into the business that you run. And those feel like sort of an oil and water type of thing in many corporate settings. It's like on a day like that, hey, we've got the agenda. We've only got this much time together. We've got all of our leaders together. Everyone's time is so valuable. We got to stick to the agenda and we got to finish all of our business oriented things, right? We've got business to attend to. You stop that. You spent 90 minutes. You, quote unquote, I'm putting air quotes, you sacrificed the agenda to address a team member and to see them and to meet them and to help them. Tell me about some of your perspective between this. Where does emotion fit into business?
Oh, dude, what a great question. In my opinion, it can't not exist in business. And I do think business gets that poor stereotype, like our dad's business, where, there was no emotion, there was no feeling. You show up, you clock in, you get a paycheck, or you show up, you execute strategy. You don't know anything personal about your team or what everybody's going through. And then you leave. I think nowadays you can't have business without emotion, particularly like love. I truly you can't have successful business without love. I think love is the absolute fuel source that drives teams, that drives appreciation and meaning. And it's a sticky word to talk about in business because of HR implications. We don't say that word around here. Somebody's going to, file a HR suit. But I think it's, if you look at, especially our generation, millennials and younger, you notice people are leaving jobs often. They're going to the next job for lots of reasons. Gallup is a great resource. Gallup they've been around forever, and they do employee engagement and business surveys, like people surveys in business they've done it for years. And what's interesting is our generation and Gen Z, and I think there's one more that exists now. I don't know if it's Alpha or whatnot.
Oh, wow. I didn't even know that. Couldn't tell you.
Maybe I'm making it up, but I do think there's another one that showed up.
Probably.
But they're hopping. And one of the biggest contributions to them leaving is their supervisor. They don't feel seen or appreciated by their supervisor. And this is a generation where it's people need that love. They need that love, not just from the supervisor, but from their peers, people that they're working with. And if you don't have that, we go back to a very painful life.
Okay, so you took it one step further. I said emotion, you said love.
I did say love. Yeah.
Is that a word that you actually use within the AFS culture?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yes.
Tell me more about that, because that goes, as you said, that goes even more into using that word in a typical corporate environment would be an HR violation. I mean, I'm throwing up my hands in a big X. That would be like, we do not use that word. That has no place in business.
Yeah, I mean, am I sitting down across from the 17-year-old girl that we just hired and saying how much I love you? No. But the word love and the essence of love does show up in how we serve our members, in the conversations we have with our team, whether it's praise or whether it's accountability. Like, do we have a ton of accountability conversations here with each other? And they either start or end with, dude, I'm telling you this because I actually love you. Or, dude, I told you that because I actually really care about and love you. And again, like if there isn't that like shared understanding or relationship that the person that you're engaging business with or relationship with, you're questioning, well, does this person actually like care about me, or insert another word, love me? Then you're not going to have a cohesive entity, and you're not going to be able to do impactful things and meaningful stuff in the world if you don't have that within your unit. Like, I think get your take on this, but I think when people start businesses, it comes from a place of fulfilling a need. And the reason that they're doing it is because they have a lot of passion and love behind fulfilling that need. So if you're starting something with positive emotions like love, why would you not carry that out through your organization into the impact that you want to have? I mean, do you feel similar, like with your experience, starting businesses and working with people and having that love kind of fill in?
Yeah, well, I would say the same thing. In the people that I choose to work with, I run my own business, so that I don't have team members. I'm solo in my business, but that means the clients that I choose to work with, I desire and think it's important and expect a level of, I don't think love would be the word that I would have associated with it, but the way that we're describing it, and as I think about it right now, that's what I seek in all the interactions that I have. And I don't draw a distinction between if I'm interacting with a family member or if I'm interacting with a potential business partner. I want there to be a sense of a mutual love or a mutual respect between us. And I just feel more fulfilled if I do connect with the people that I work with on a deeper level. And that to me is important. And if that's not existent, then I guess I just believe that there are people that I can go find and connect with on the level that I want to. And work can be a really fulfilling thing. As we've said, I don't think it has to be 100% of the time or 100% of relationships, but I just think the people that you end up working with, the longest and that you stay with, it's because you have that mutual respect or that mutual love. So yeah, I think that's important. And I think it absolutely has a place in business. Why would we draw a line between our personal lives and our professional lives, especially these days? I think that those two blend together more and more all the time. And why would we value these things in one area of our life, but not in an area of our life that takes up maybe even a majority of our time?
Preach. Amen. I do think love can also, like, that word can be misconstrued and have its own meaning and definition to certain people. And it's such a big word that encompasses a lot of emotions. So I think, like, the way I perceive love, like, dude, no brainer, love, like, throw it in your mix. Some people could perceive that as like a romantic love or familial love, where it's like such a rich, deeper thing that's only supposed to exist for certain people, and then insert other adjectives when they engage with other people. So it's a broad term, but it does generate, a lot of conversation.
I've also got to believe that not everyone might have a positive reaction or a positive experience with the word love.
Really?
If I think of, well, I don't know, tell me about your, growing up in your family dynamic. I'm making the assumption, and tell us more about it. I'm making the assumption that love was a positive word. You felt that within your family dynamic. And so I feel like then, does that cause you to go through life associating positive things with love? What about someone who might have come from a family dynamic where they wouldn't say that love was present? They weren't treated with respect within the bounds of their own home. And then do they develop a different relationship with the word love? Does that mean something different to them? And maybe someone could perceive the exact same word in a different way. I guess tell me about how that word, what that represented as you were growing up.
Yeah. I mean, it was all positive. It was all like my parents are super, like my dad's from Argentina a lot, and my mom is Italian and English. So there's a ton of cultural like affection that is shown with your loved ones. You go to Argentina, you're kissing everybody on the cheek, sometimes on the lips. So it's a lot of outward like affection that you're physically displaying to the people in your family. So for me, yeah, it was my siblings and I, we were immersed in love in a way, in the positive connotation. So that is my only connection with the word. To your point, I would be very interested in talking with somebody that has a poor connotation with love and what that means to them. Because my definition of love is only positive. How can there be any, if it's true love, if it's real, actual like love, how can there be any negative associated with that? So that would be an interesting conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. And my definition aligns with yours. And so I just also would be curious and would maybe imagine that based on life experience, people might not have experienced what that idea of true love before, of a love that's based on respect and understanding,
Yeah.
and feeling seen. So yeah, I don't know. It makes me wonder. Okay. So if someone's listening to this conversation, and this is how my brain works as well, I'm like, okay, I hear you. We should bring emotion. We should bring love into our work. That is okay. We can do that. Then I have this part of my brain that is, I'm going to call it the logical side of my brain. That's like, yeah, but we got bills to pay. We've got goals to meet as an organization. And, if we just focus on love all the time, what if we can't exist as a business? And what if we can't meet the numbers that we have to meet? How does that relationship end up working? And if someone's like, I'm kind of skeptical of bringing all this love and emotion into work and business because I'm afraid that I won't be able to meet the numbers or metrics that are important. How do those two things come together for you in your business experience?
Yeah. So let's talk about like the hard, I don't know, hard tasks or hard data or like the hard KPI. That's what I'm trying to say, dude. Let's talk about the hard KPIs that are associated with business, right? You have to be mindful of your revenue, your costs, forecasting strategy over the next year. Like what are we going to do? How much is that going to cost? How much money will we need to make to do that? What's our team need to look like? So all of these KPIs are not important. Like to your point, if you don't achieve certain business metrics, you will not be a business anymore, therefore leaving you impactless. And that's not why we got into business. The way that I like to frame this up between achieving KPIs but infusing love in the organization is, I think one of the highest levels of love is accountability for the other person. And if we want to achieve, the hard business KPIs, that requires a lot of accountability for others and ourselves. Maybe you can insert the word discipline there somewhere. Like we have to be disciplined to produce revenue. We have to be disciplined to manage our costs. Somebody's responsible for that in the organization. You got the revenue guy, you got the cost guy, you got the team development guy or whatever. And you have to someone has to hold them accountable to performing. So I think where businesses get in trouble is they lack the accountability to achieve those KPIs because they're afraid of making the other person feel bad, or they're afraid of themselves feeling bad. It's a self-preservation thing to not engage with that person and say, dude, this is a little bit off. Let's have a conversation on why that is. And again, I got to give you some observation. I got to give you some insights that are going to help you because I love you. So I think through love, we can have those really heavy accountability conversations. And through that, the KPIs will they'll take care of themselves. So I think love is not about making people feel good all the time. I think it's a byproduct. Like, hey, dude, if I feel loved, I'm going to feel great if we go through this, high accountability process. But it's not fluffy. It's not about oh, don't worry about that. Like, it's not an excuse to not have difficult conversations and hold people accountable. In fact, it's the ultimate vehicle to do that successfully. So I think if we can reframe love in that light coming into an organization, then it's synergistic, then it works.
Tell me more about these difficult conversations, because that was something that you had written about on your blog, and you had talked about a framework. Tell us about that framework and how you approach these difficult conversations, and maybe some of the experiences or learnings that you've had in ways to do it and not do it, because those conversations are called difficult conversations for a reason.
I know, and I actually feel silly talking about this because I have not mastered this by any means. I've had a lot of them, and I still hate them. Like, if I have to go have a difficult conversation with someone that I really care about, I would be lying if I don't get like this butterfly anxiety thing, even after having 1,000 of them. So
what's behind that? Tell me more about that. I feel the exact same way, by the way.
Yes.
But what is, when you get anxious about it, what is that feeling? Is it a fear? A fear of what? What's behind it?
Here's what it is, dude. Honestly, I always thought it was the fear of making the other person feel bad. But after deeper reflection, it's the fear of making myself feel bad, which is cowardly. Like, I don't want to go have the conversation because I'm going to feel negative after having it. Therefore, I'm going to abdicate my responsibility for doing it in self-preservation, which goes totally against my value set and how I operate and how the impact I want to have. So if I'm succumbing to that, then I'm not being my authentic self. So that's always the fear. That's always the subconscious that's coming up and be like, dude, do you really want to go have this conversation? Is it that big of a deal? Do you really want to put yourself through this and feel shitty? That always comes up. And innately, I don't want to do it. But when I get connected with who I am as a person, I have to do it. So the framework really is, dude, it is being super transparent. Like, so if I have to go have a conversation with my wife or a team member here, it's stating it up front, like, hey, dude, something on my chest, like I gotta talk to you about something that's a little uncomfortable, but here are my intentions. So like, I always start with stating like, this is the outcome I want to have after this conversation. Here are my intentions. And actually, there's a great tweak to add to this. Feedback is a scary word. Feedback connotes like I did something wrong. And he's a compassionate leader that's kind of all over the country, preaching compassionate leadership and infusing love in your organization. But he was saying, hey, dude, switch your word feedback to insights. Like, hey, I have some insights that I like to share with you, and here are my intentions. So I always state the intention. I always state the insights that I have.
Well, pause there for a second, just because I think that is such an important piece that often gets overlooked. And I'm talking specifically about stating your intention behind having the conversation in the first place. How often do we just come in firing and just delivering what's on our mind and how we feel, and the other person immediately feels attacked or threatened? And if we would have just had that recentering or that centering conversation beforehand around, this is actually why I want to have this conversation. This is my intention behind this. And I was talking with someone, it was probably Nate. He even said, and sometimes it's even more powerful to say and state what your intentions are not. My intentions are not to hurt you, to make you feel a certain way. But I don't want to just brush past this piece of stating intention, because I think that is perhaps the most important part of all of this that probably gets overlooked a lot.
Yeah, I love this. I love the stating what my intentions are not. That's great. But you're right, because at the end of the day, I think if we don't do that, then we start having these assumptions in our head. Particularly if you're receiving the information, you have this narrative in your head. Well, what's this person getting at? Are they mad at me? Do they not like me? It sounds like they're really upset with me. It sounds like they're, they have poor intentions coming into the conversation. They want to make me feel bad. So I think it just clears up the self-doubt monster that starts going in people's head.
I feel like it's also a good internal check to revisit, what actually are my intentions for having this conversation? To really think about that, and then to have to look someone else in the eye and voice that to them. I think it makes us check, well, is my intention truly to be curious and to try to understand this person? Or is my intention that I just want to deliver them feedback and I want them to change their behavior? I want them to just do something differently because this is what I think has to happen. I think it's a good check for ourselves to take a moment and pause before we have this conversation and revisit our own intentions and to actually put some words behind it and state it.
Yeah, I think sometimes as the giver of feedback or insights, we could lose the intention. Like the reason you're having the conversation in the first place. And then the anxiety of having the conversation could take over the intention, which could originally mean it could be coming from, hey, I just want you to get better. I want you to get better. So you're talking to a team member. Whereas if you don't state the intention, it could just be my intention is to get through this thing as fast as I can so I can move on to, my emails.
Yeah. Okay. And then I have a quick question about the word insights. I think that's an interesting spin on it. So when I actually hear the word insight, my brain goes to, well, it sort of sounds like Kemper might know something that he thinks that I don't know. And so now he's going to give me insight into this thing that he knows that I don't. So I actually think that's kind of an interesting word choice from feedback to insight. Tell me more of your thoughts on that word insight and what that means.
Yeah. I think it's more like the word feedback as being so polarizing in this, at least in the workplace culture. Like as soon as somebody hears feedback, it immediately goes to negative feedback. At least in my experience. Like nobody says, hey, I got some feedback for you. You're doing a really great job at XYZ. It's typically like, hey, I got some feedback for you. We got to work on these things. So I guess unless I can have that conversation right then and there, maybe just omitting both words is maybe the word isn't even necessary. But if it's like, hey, dude, I got some feedback. Can you and I touch base real quick at 1:00? From now to 1:00, the person's like, oh shit, what's this feedback that they got to talk to me about? What did I do? And then there's the anxiety Rolodex going back through the day. So in insights, I do kind of agree with your definition and how it got translated by you. I think insights, could be, it's a word that hasn't been polarized, at least yet, in workplace culture or business culture. It actually, in my mind, and I could be totally wrong, but it does seem to be like a little bit more of like an optimistic word. Hey, I got some insights. I look at Instagram. Hey, let's look at the insights. What's it showing? So that's, to me, it's like, hey, I am seeing something from my vantage point that maybe you're not. And it's not supposed to come from a place of like, hey, in all my wisdom, I see these things that you don't see because you're not there yet. It's just, hey, dude, I'm at this corner of the room and here's what I'm seeing. And you can't see it because it's a blind spot because you're at that part of it. Let me share them with you.
In these situations, the word that I often use is observation. It's just something that I've observed. It's just something that I've seen. It's not bad. It's not good. It's just something that I've observed. What do you think about that word?
I like that word, dude. Yes. Yeah, it's neutral. You can't not observe it because it's your observations.
Right. And
yeah,
that doesn't mean that it has to be true. It doesn't mean that it has to be false. It doesn't mean that there's a blame or anything. It's just something that I've observed. To me, it's like a very neutral, I'm just stating something that from my vantage point, I have observed, something that I have seen, and it opens up the conversation. Anyway, those are the conversations that I enjoy. I think you might listen to this and say, why are you focusing on this one word so much? But I think you and I probably share a common belief that our words matter, and the words that we use, I think we should be intentional about the words that we use because it does affect how people receive the message that we're trying to share. And so anyway, all right, we've talked about this, the intention part of it. What comes after stating your intention?
Oh, the difficult conversation framework. So after the intention stated, basically I will go into sharing my observations or my insights, insert the word. And this is the time to actually deliver the feedback that you want this person to receive. And I do think, again, one of the things that going into these conversations that you have to leave at the door is trying to control the other person's emotional response, right? No matter how you frame it, what words you use, like you have zero control over how this person is going to respond to what you're trying to convey to them.
That's true.
I think the setting the intentions definitely helps mitigate, emotional responsiveness because now they're in a frame of mind of understanding what the shared outcome is for this conversation. And then from there, I actually asked them, how it lands with them. Like, dude, am I off on this? Or do you understand what I'm trying to say? Or help me fill in the gaps here. Like, I actually bring them into the conversation to problem solve with me. And there have been many times where I've been totally off. And the person they're saying, hey, dude, I get where you're coming from, but here's actually, what had happened. And it fills the gaps in my head, my assumptions that I would have never had answers to if we didn't have the conversation. So I always try to bring them in to help me understand type of tone.
Yeah, so kind of that idea that it's not meant to be a one-way conversation. I'm not just telling you what I'm seeing, but you're bringing them in, and it's a two-way conversation. I'm sharing, you can share. Let's try to gain a deeper understanding together.
Correct. Yeah, I think that word, it's understanding. I actually like to go in asking more questions in these conversations than stating more of, my observations.
What do you find when this framework plays out as sort of hoped? You enter these difficult conversations feeling fear, feeling anxiety. What do you leave with?
If they work out the way I hoped?
Maybe even if they don't.
Okay.
But if you sort of follow this framework,
Yeah.
Either way, how do you find yourself leaving these conversations?
So most of the time, honestly, even if they work out in a way that I didn't expect, I leave feeling more connected. I leave feeling more connected with the person. I feel like I understand them more. I also feel like, our relationship is going to be more vulnerable and more safe. I feel like there's a weight off my shoulder because if I didn't have the conversation with somebody, I'm walking around every single day engaging with them with this narrative on my mind and like almost resentment maybe building up based on what I'm telling myself about them. So more times than not, they end very good, where it's shared understanding. They're grateful for me presenting the feedback, and we're moving on in a more cohesive and coherent way. There are times though where it doesn't work out, and there are people, no matter how, if I execute like the perfect framework, whatever it is to this person, their current circumstances just might not allow them to have that conversation right then and there. And that's okay. And there are times when we actually pause the conversation, like, you know what, appreciate what you're trying to do, but this is the right time for me to have this conversation. Great. Let's hit time out. I'm always here whenever you're ready to re-pick it back up. So again, you can't control, you don't know everything that's going on in people's lives. You can try to be as tactful as you can, but there can be times where people are just like, there's just too much going on. They're in too much pain to go to that place.
And what if this sort of mutual understanding, I feel like whenever we talk about difficult conversations, I'm not saying you and I'm saying we as a society, we build out these frameworks, and there's sort of this assumption that if you use these frameworks, you're always going to end with a sort of positive outcome. Understanding is an interesting word because although I think in these situations we tend to assume that is a sort of positive understanding, developing a more deeper understanding may also lead you to understand that maybe there's just a difference in values, or there's a difference in beliefs, or there's a difference in something that maybe the result of this conversation is what feels negative, in that maybe it's not the outcome that you were hoping for. Maybe it's not like, you're hugging each other at the end and you're like, hey, we have this mutual deeper understanding. We're going to continue to work together. This is going to be great. Maybe you come to the realization that there's something, because of this understanding, there's something in the way that makes it not a great partnership or not a great opportunity moving forward. Has that ever happened?
Yes. Yeah, it has. It has. And, it is unfortunate because the deep part of me wants to try and find some alignment in value set or morals or intention that allows us to keep, air quotes, doing business together, whether that's in business or friendship or whatever it is. But yeah, there have been times, particularly with me, my experience is like friends growing up through my 20s to like now. Like there's just a different value set that really don't allow us to continue the relationship that we had when I was 22. And that's okay. Like that's totally okay. I don't not love the person anymore, and I wish the best for them, but it's not in line with how I want to go about life and engage the way that I do. So yeah, it's sad, it's unfortunate, but as I feel like as you kind of go throughout life a little bit, and I still have a lot of life to go, dude. I'm only 32, but as you go through these years of your life, you'll start to weed out some of these people that have a different value set than you do, to where you're going to bring more people that are more aligned with you, which I do believe having those difficult conversations, because you have that foundational alignment, does lead to a more positive outcome. But I think when you start having these initially, like whether you're in your 20s or whatever, you are probably going to lose more people in your life than you'll gain.
Yeah, and so it's kind of like I'm with you in that, like, the end result can be a positive outcome, because whether the person that you're having the difficult conversation with, maybe you come to the understanding that it's not the right partnership, either from a friendship standpoint or a professional standpoint. But where the positive outcome can come in is that by maybe removing this person from your life or distancing yourself from this person or whatever, you can now bring in new opportunity or new relationship or new people who you can align with. And that, to me, is where it can always end up as a positive outcome, even if it doesn't feel that way in the moment, because you're opening up space for something new. And that is difficult to remember in those moments. Difficult for me to remember, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But
That's
such I think, important thing.
That's true. Your reframe like is two steps down the road, which I love. Like, yeah, to your point, you might remove a little bit of the filth in your life to make room for something else that's going to help you grow. So, and I don't even think about it that way, like that, or that far out. But that is a great nugget to keep with you as you start nurturing these relationships.
I was just going to say, and then please, it goes back to that idea that you talked about earlier of accepting a base level of, some sort of pain or friction in our lives because it's comfortable and it's familiar. And I think I do this all the time. I automatically assume that if I get rid of that, I'm opening up space for something that's going to be negative. It's going to be worse. But what if it's not? What if it's actually better? Your question.
This is perfect, because you and Eileen have been in the van for 18 months, 16 months?
Yeah, 18.
18 months. And before that, you were was it Mass Mutual?
Yeah.
So here's the thing. This is my question for you, because that is a massive pivot where you have, it sounds, from what I know from you, Mass Mutual was a great opportunity, great team. The work you're doing was great. To make that transition from your business now to not, and living in a van and traveling the country with your wife, very scary. And, how did you make that transition from something that was pretty good and fulfilling to an unknown that had a lot of risk and a lot of potential downside? How did you make that shift internally?
I think inherently, anytime that we want to make meaningful change in our lives, we have to sacrifice something. Whether that is security or financial security, whether it's an element of stability, whether we're sacrificing comfortability, whether we're sacrificing the familiar, we're sacrificing some of our routine. I think we have to sacrifice something if we want to make change. And in order to do that, inherently, I don't want to sacrifice anything. I don't want to give up my comfortability. I don't want to give up my security. I'm not like some weird robot who's okay with giving up those things. To me, then, in order to decide when is it the right time for us to sacrifice some of those things, I think we have to have a really deep understanding of ourselves and what we value in life and what we want and what makes our life meaningful. So as I look at that decision in my life, I was very aware and intentional with the fact that I knew some of my beliefs. I believed that life potentially can be short. I lost my dad when he was 50 years old. I was 17. He had dreams that he didn't get to achieve and he didn't get to do in his life because it wasn't guaranteed. And so that shifted for me that, I'm gonna attack my life with a little bit of impatience, because I don't know that the future is guaranteed. And so if there's things that I believe are going to make my life more meaningful, they're going to be fulfilling to me, then I'm just not comfortable waiting to pursue those things. So I think having a deep understanding of what brought me meaning, how do I want to spend my time, what things do I value in my life, that was all pointing me a certain direction. That ended up being living in a van with my wife and traveling the country and experiencing new things. But that was what was behind that decision, was having a really deep belief and understanding of what do I value in my life, what makes my life meaningful. And I think that's not the only way. I think that's too black and white. That is one of the most important ways that I think we overcome having to sacrifice things in our lives in order to make change, because it's never easy.
Mm-hmm.
And in that case, it's been one of the most fulfilling and meaningful decisions I've ever made in my life. And I don't regret it for a second.
That's great, man. I remember sending you a video when you were about to pivot and do, I don't think this was right when you were going to jump in the van, but you were pivoting away from Mass Mutual. And it was so, and Eileen brought it up to me, and I was just so inspired, man. And this is a great point to what I said earlier about this region beta theory. Like, from what it sounds like, you had a very great, fulfilling life. You had a great career, working with great people, doing meaningful work, had a supporting partner, but there was something that was missing that caused this just low grade of pain that if you didn't pivot, it would always be there. And here you are now. So I just, super inspiring, man. Your story. And I'm sure, some of your experiences growing up, particularly 17, losing your father, tend to have you like not be super patient with waiting how life's going to play out for you.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you saying that. That it means a lot to me. And yeah, I just think it comes back to the idea that things don't have to be bad in order for them to be better. And in order for us to want to make things better in our lives, that doesn't have to come with the assumption that things are already in a really bad place. So yeah, I didn't have a bad life when I had my last full-time job. I worked with good people, had a good environment, I had a lot of security and stability in my life. And yet I still had a vision for my life that was even different and something that was going to be more meaningful. I look at that, I apply that to my own personal. That's why I pursue therapy. That's why Eileen and I do couples therapy. I don't have a bad relationship with myself. I don't have a bad relationship with my wife. They can be better, though. I think better always exists. And if that always exists, then I guess I feel like shame on me for not pursuing a version of better that's always out there.
Love that. With you all the way.
As we start to wrap up our conversation, sharing some of your beliefs and doing some of the writing that you've been doing, tell me about this part of you that wants to share and wants to put something out. I'm always inherently kind of interested in, it's the same thing for me. I revisit it often. Sometimes I'm like, why do I feel so compelled to host these conversations and do this show and put myself out there and other people? And am I selfish, or why do I think I'm so important? All of these different things. What's behind it for you as far as why you want to share some of these experiences and learnings and perspectives that you have?
I definitely think it's an outlet from all of this pent up passion, that exists in me. And I need to reflect a lot more deeper. Like, why does relationship building and transcending transaction mean so much to me? But there's a part of me that's like, man, I feel when I do this thing or talk about this thing or have a relationship that feels like this, I feel so high. Like I feel so like when we came back from COVID, the gym business in Michigan, dude, we were shut down for a long time. We were doing virtual workouts, but as soon as we opened up our doors again and we saw human beings that we saw 3-4 times a week in person pre 2020, there was a feeling to me, dude, that I felt like I was missing a drug. If I can share that feeling with other people, that's that's the most rewarding thing I can do. So I guess it does kind of stem from a selfish place of like, for me to feel good, I got to do this thing. But I also think like, hey, for me to have the most impact in my family, in the community, in the world, like I got to start with myself. If I'm high energy and I'm feeling good, I can't have that impact if I'm not. So this writing is a means to me trying to share this energy that I have built inside with other people. And it may land with some and it may not with others. But I'm robbing the people that aren't reading this or I'm not sharing this with, of maybe, having a little self discovery of their own. At the end of the day, like, I love it. It makes me feel good to write and, start creating some content. And the message is healthy. It's a healthy message. It's pouring to yourself. It's not like me trying to peddle Snickers and donuts. I'm peddling, love and human relationship.
I think it comes back to the idea of as long as we're creating things in our lives that we believe in and we believe in our intention behind creating them, then you just you that's a great litmus test in and of itself. And you never know, you never know who might read it and who you might impact or who it might affect in some way. And I've got to believe that there's a part of you that, just like being in the gym and being in front of someone and seeing them change on a deeper level, if you can broaden that, and by sharing online, if that can expose you to more people and you can impact someone and have that sort of change in them, that's a meaningful thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me share one. Do we have time for one story?
Yeah.
Here's a story. This actually puts it in perspective, dude. So we had a young girl come in who had history of an eating disorder. She met with me. We got all the info down. And in one of our tests that we do with all new members, we do a body composition test and a weight test. And with this young lady, it was like no fly zone. Omit that test because it's going to reemerge like some bad habits. So when she came in, we didn't omit that test. We lost communication down the chain, and she ended up doing that test, and it caused a lot of feelings, a lot of emotions, a lot of scare in the family. Like, she just got set back, 6 months of hard work trying to move forward over this disorder. So that was heart wrenching. I got on the phone with the mom and talked to the mom, and did everything that we could to keep her engaged. And at some glorious moment, she decided to continue to move forward, and she's been with us for the last year. I got an email from the mom last week, and it was probably like 2 pages long of this young lady's time with us here. So we had a poor start, but after engaging with us for over a year, we were able to rebuild the equity, rebuild the trust. She was engaging with members of our team that showed her how able she was in life. And she's never been more confident. She has progressed to a mental state that their family didn't realize that she could get to in such a short period of time. And I'm not saying like, hey, our program's so great. What I'm saying is this work matters. And we potentially, for a rocky start, we potentially saved this young girl's life. So I do think her having this this love, human driven interaction can help save people's lives, man. You don't ever know what's going on in somebody's life. They could be a day or two away from making a really horrible decision because they feel like there's no hope. So I think what we do, the writing that I'm doing, the stuff that you're doing, it's to flood the world with some like hope in a world that kind of, loses sight of that.
I totally agree, man. I think that's a powerful story as far as demonstrating everything that we've been talking about and the power of bringing love and emotion and respect and seeing people and valuing people and building relationship. That's just such a powerful example of why that's important and why that works. It doesn't mean we have to be perfect, but when those are the underlying things behind our interactions, it just allows for so much more room to be imperfect and to meet people imperfectly.
Yeah.
And some pretty incredible things can happen. And, I just, from my perspective in seeing AFS, seeing your gym Applied Fitness Solutions over the last 6 or 7 years or so, I see that in your business. I see that in the way that you all interact with your employees. I see that in the way that you interact with your clients. And it's been an incredible story to have at sometimes, kind of a front row seat to, and at sometimes a little bit, a couple rows back, but to be able to watch and see a business that operates the way that you all do, builds relationships in the way that you all do. I just want you to know that I have a lot of respect for you, for Mike, for all of the leadership, because it takes a lot of guts. That's, as we talked about, that's not necessarily the traditional way that businesses are run. And I think that's what makes AFS a special and a unique place. And I think that needs to be said and recognized. So thank you for the work that you do.
Appreciate that, man. Means a lot.
If people wanted to find you or get in touch with you or learn about AFS, what are the best ways for them to do that?
Yeah, I would say for me, following my LinkedIn, Kemper Sosa, or my Facebook, this blog that we started out the episode with. If you were to head up to my LinkedIn, you'll see the link there, Transcending Transaction. As far as my business, Applied Fitness Solutions. If you follow me, I'm always reposting Applied Fitness Solutions stuff. So if you follow me, you'll find your way to Applied Fitness Solutions, or just type in Applied Fitness Solutions on Instagram and you'll see all the cool stuff that we do internally. But yeah, man, I appreciate you having me on. I could deep dive into this stuff all day long. So I'm leaving here feeling high energy, and I appreciate that from you. Thank you.
Same, brother. I appreciate the opportunity, and yeah, thanks for investing time with me. It's always meaningful. Thank you so much for tuning in to my conversation with Kemper today. If you enjoyed it, would you take a moment and leave that 5-star rating? That would mean a lot to me. It would help the show. And if you've been enjoying the show, if you enjoyed these conversations, I'd really appreciate your support in supporting meaningful conversations like these. If you want to support the show financially, as this is a small independent show that I run by myself, your support would really mean a lot to me. And you can find the link to the Patreon in the show notes of this episode. All right, we'll be back next week. See you on Tuesday.